Good afternoon. How are you today? It is gorgeous out. It's 60 degrees. I'm wearing a shirt, no jacket. The wind is very light as compared to yesterday. And the sky is absolutely blue. Look at that, every direction. So, good days here. When I was being taught by the Jesuits, and we were talking about the white man's burden and a whole number of contradictory ideas, I was led to believe that we were being taught that a bad man was a good man's problem. That is to say, if there was somebody near you who was committing crimes, you were supposed to help that person find the way back. And redemption was available to all who did ill and violated the laws of man and of higher beings in those days. So, but what life has taught me is that a bad man is not a good man's problem to correct. For most people, a bad man is a temptation to be bad. Because in a lot of cases, the more accomplished of these malevolent masters of imperfection and perfidy and crime succeed. In fact, I have given a lecture, a short one, a part of one, in which I say that crime pays, because statistically, we don't prosecute everybody. So if you fit into the category that law enforcement doesn't get to, for that person, crime pays. And if you choose certain kinds of crime, the statistics are even better. White-collar crime, more sophisticated crime. And there are a lot of prosecutors around the country that don't balance their own checkbook, so these financial crimes escape them. So it takes a certain kind of insight. When I started as an AUSA, there was a prosecutor named Stern, S-T-E-R-N, in New Jersey. And he had mastered a way of following the money to get these bad guys. And when I hadn't heard from the Southern District yet, I applied to his office in New Jersey. And we had a meeting. He's a fabulous guy. And I told him that I wanted to prosecute corruption cases, and I was particularly interested in the way he would follow the money. And he said to me, well, wait and see what happens in the Southern District. Because what he was telling me was there might not be enough cases in New Jersey to keep me going. But in New York, there certainly would be. And he said, if you don't get in New York, come on back, call me up. And I did get to the Southern District, Lower Manhattan. And so the rest is who I became and what I did. So, bad men, who could you think of? Well, how about let's go to Mar-a-Lago and Kanye West and Trump. Now there's a pairing, right? So who would want to do that? And everybody's saying, oh, how could he do it? How could he? What else would he do? He hangs out with the most, worthless, evil people on the planet. And so you'd be surprised. This is a guy that has love letters from the North Korean leader of all that's insane and terrible. So what happens? Imagine him shouting at Ye, his new name, instead of Kanye West, about Kanye's or Ye's interest in running for the presidency himself. So you got Trump, who is, you would think, on a slippery slope trying to become president again, if any of us who have an IQ above 60 have anything to say about it. But he's concerned that Ye is going to run for president. That's really something. We're warned to be concerned about the infections, and that the inoculations we've received are not perfect. Well, we know that because people have been getting the infection despite some of these vaccinations. And I'm told that the latest one, the fifth vaccination I've had for myself, and also because of Holly. Somebody's cutting wood out there not far from us. And these vaccinations, you can't assume they're safe. And now that we have kind of a triple threat, we have the flu, we have these other things going on, you have to be especially careful. And probably most of the people I'm talking to have been, and will be very surprised if some chance encounter causes them to get COVID. And the thing that worries me, most people, I think, is long COVID. That is, that the side effects afterwards, after you get through whatever the flu-like symptoms are, when you come out the other side, are you going to have a muddled brain more than you have now, or something else like that? It's interesting to see the protests in Canada. Trudeau is on the wrong end of demonstrations for the Freedom Convoy. Now, I say he's on the wrong end because from the perspective of the Freedom Convoy, but what the Freedom Convoy wants is no vaccines, no mandates for vaccines. In other words, they want the unhealthy alternative to actually being safe. It's amazing. And he's getting resistance for invoking laws to have them removed from where they're blocking traffic and so forth with large trucks. It's sort of the export of the demonstrations that we had in the DC area. They have them now up in Canada. I'm with Trudeau on all those issues. That is, there should be a vaccine, and it should be compulsory. It should be mandated. It's a health issue. And our Supreme Court had a decision that supported exactly that proposition, and nowhere has it been imposed. There's been a hortatory, you better do it, you should do it, and so forth, and some have. And why not? I think the reason they don't is because they want to pretend it won't affect you because they're concerned about how it will hurt business. Imagine that. And there's been an advance in Virginia. This is what's called a right to work state. I always think of it as a right to work for less. What it means, we don't want you collectively bargaining as a public employee with the state to get reasonable wages, conditions of labor, and so forth like that. So we deny you the right to bargain, and we basically say, you take it or leave it. And it is an at-will state. But in recent years, in 2020, we passed some legislation that allows for bargaining. And as a result, some public employees are doing better. And it should have always been this way. Obviously, the theory is, one employee versus an unfair employer doesn't have the muscle. But 20, 30, 50, 60, 80, you start having an effort to really bargain fairly and with some weight for what is right and fair for you. And the last thing that comes to my mind is people were talking about how they couldn't study remotely and the kids couldn't do that and so forth. And I may have been a peculiar case, but I was very interested in math. And before I got to college, there was a professor who was on one of these local channels, and he was teaching calculus. And I was very curious about it because I knew that Newton developed this kind of math to deal with delta t, delta velocity. The change in velocity, change in time, is a way to define acceleration, for example. And it was more complicated than that, but that's what it was about. And Newton found there wasn't a math that dealt with this problem, and so he created calculus for the terror to some and the enjoyment of others. Well, the DC people have a program, and they were teaching English on, in person. But what happened because of COVID, they started teaching it so that it was streamed. And it became very popular in DC, but it became popular around the world. We don't understand the gifts that we have by technology to release people, to give them the freedom to develop themselves individually, either exclusively or supplementing whatever other education they're getting, to allow their minds to go places that when I was a kid, you go to the local library and you can get a lot out of there, they let you read anything you wanted, and I did. And the most astonishing story I heard about anybody using a library was how a person in Harlem had read every book in the library there and went on to become a great author. So what's the wrap-up for today? The wrap-up is everything around us has to appear to be a mystery if we don't have a standard by which to measure it. So, do we have a measure that tells us that Trump and Ye are worthless individuals that we have to guard against because they can only confound what's good and best about America? Should we be concerned about infections and do safe things for ourselves and for others? Yes. Why? Because safety matters. And we should be careful not to be buying a bill of goods that helps businesses risk our well-being by denying us, say, remote access to school. We should embrace the notion that health matters generally and that what Trudeau is doing is sensible, and America must consider, if COVID returns in anything like its former force, that we should do the same thing. We should also be thinking about what is fair for workers. A minimum wage, what do you think of that? We have to do better than that, particularly where we notice there's been excess profits going to businesses that is not shared with the worker when the worker's efficiency contributed to those profits. And when there are generally opportunities like learning English or history or art or how to build a building or a wall, that if you can do that online to get the basics or even advanced information, why shouldn't you be able to do that? There are people that have learned to code and make a living coding, programming, because of what they learn online and streaming videos. So our America has all this opportunity, but we spend our time talking with the idiots among us, the ignoble people, those who are against freedom and education, anti-intellectual, who are against people based on their color or religion, who are terrified of science actually making them healthy. So we have to be of a different class. That is, an educated class that cares about the country that brought us to this point and that's in danger if we don't help it. So that's what I'm thinking today, and I say hello from my cathedral of trees, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.